Our next one is titled Spouse Against Everything I Want. She says, with only 2 weeks left to go, I didn't realize our parenting style was so different. This is baby number 9, number 4 for me and 6 for him. This is our first child together. I am very natural. I want a drug-free birth like my others. He doesn't get it or want to listen to my reasoning. When I let it be known that I want to be up during labor in any position I feel comfortable in, he thinks I should be in bed like a normal delivery, stuck in one position in bed for hours. Everything from breastfeeding only, cloth diapers, using a baby sling has been a big issue. I never used pacifiers and bottles. His kids had them until over age 4. I'm really worried how this is going to go. And so to this one, I also question, like, she can't be that young if she has already had 4 kids or is having her 4th kid now. And presumably he's also not that young if he's already had 5 kids and is now having his 6th child. So how do you end up in a marriage with someone who has, again, completely different values to you? I find it so hard to imagine. So for me, for example, the idea of wanting a natural drug-free birth, an unmedicated natural birth, that means that you have a value in terms of appreciating the natural process, that you have a different type of perspective when it comes to what is my body capable of, and what is the best possible start to life that I could offer my child. I think that that's part of what goes into like why people want a natural birth more than anything else. The fact that he doesn't get it or want to listen to her reasoning kind of blows my mind, because it's one of those things where it's like, she's the one giving birth. Like you can't really convince her to take painkillers. That's not how that's meant to work, but okay. And this point where she tries to explain the idea of being able to move during labor and to select, to choose the position that feels natural to you, that feels right to you, which is, by the way, generally speaking, also pretty normal, pretty natural, and is much less likely to result in tears if you move with your body and you try to listen to what your body desires during birth. And then everything else kind of follows down the same path in terms of breastfeeding, cloth diapers, using a baby sling. Like, I can't even imagine having a disagreement about trying to use a baby sling. Things like pacifiers, bottles. I would say that the life that she envisions for her kids and the life that he envisions for his kids are about this far away from each other. And I question a little bit how much you could possibly have in common as grown adults with lots of kids if you've never had a decision, if you've never had a discussion in terms of what types of parenting style you want to have with your children. Now, I understand that raising newborns, raising babies is different from raising teenagers, adults, and so on, but there's still enough crossover there that I would question exactly how you're managing to do that without having ever realized that you're completely on different pages when it comes to, and she says she has only 2 weeks left to go before giving birth, I assume. So how did it possibly take so long for you to realize that you're not on the same page? I don't have a lot of opinions. Like I honestly don't have advice here. I do think that things like breastfeeding, cloth diapers, how you give birth are fundamentally the female role. And so obviously she can labor and give birth in whatever method, whatever way she wants. If she wants to breastfeed, then she can go ahead and breastfeed and so on. But when she says that everything that she wants for her baby has been a big issue, and if you disagree on things like using pacifiers, etc., then you're going to have a ton of conflict in your marriage. And I have no idea how you're going to work past it, because to be honest, this is like so many layers of disagreements that I don't know how you could possibly get on the same page. And if you're both relatively I want to say old, but I don't mean like old. I rather mean, if you're pretty set in your ways, you both have a lot of experience with kids. So this is not, the chance of you being able to convince him to change his mind or to change his outlook is pretty low. And the chance of him being able to convince you to change your mind is pretty low. So I honestly have no idea where you could possibly go from here. It seems to me like a pretty untenable situation and a pretty untenable marriage. And so I guess my only piece of advice for anyone who might be listening to this is please, please, please try to find out these things before you decide to have kids with people, before you decide to get married. I get the point that, a lot of the time you grow throughout a marriage, or I say a lot of the time, pretty much all the time, you grow throughout a marriage as well. You change together. And ideally, you know, the fact that you are in a relationship and you're with each other and you're supporting each other will also change you in similar directions. So you'll also transform into something else. And that's pretty awesome and romantic and sweet and great and so on. However, that will always fail if you're really like, what you want out of life is very different. If the types of things that you just appreciate and enjoy and want to do are very, very different, then it's really, really hard for you to try and salvage a marriage or a long-term relationship from that. So I find it quite sad, and I really just don't understand how this could possibly happen. The very first reply is, sounds like there'll have to be a lot of compromise. Yeah, you know, and I'm not sure you could compromise quite this much. Could you? Like, I would never compromise on most of the things that she wants. I would maybe compromise on things like cloth diapers. I wouldn't compromise on a pacifier. I wouldn't compromise on breastfeeding. So yeah, that sounds like it's gonna be tough. Next, person suggests a documentary titled The Business of Being Born. And then she says, my husband let me take the reins with my baby stuff, and it's easier on him with my decisions anyway, because she's exclusively breastfeeding. He doesn't have to feed her. Cloth diapers, he rarely changes them, but he will do the disposals. Where and how I wanted to birth, no argument. Medical stuff, he doesn't even try to argue with me because he knows he'll lose. I'm a nurse, so I'm more knowledgeable in that area. And then OP replies here, which is a pretty horrendous reply. She says, he works 68 hours from Monday to Saturday, so he won't be in charge of diaper changes or feedings. He's just that controlling that he has to decide everything, even things that should be up to me medically. Really, it doesn't matter what the subject is, he has to disagree or have something to say about it. For example, if I were to buy a personal hygiene water bottle for after birth and Depends underwear for the week after birth, he thought that was stupid. Makes me feel like I don't know what is best for me. I'm going to be 41 next week. I think I should be old enough to know what I need. And that really just sounds to me like this whole marriage is just like, I don't know how you can move on from here. So if I felt like I was being infantilized by my husband as a 40-year-old woman, it would completely blow my mind. The idea of buying yourself a water bottle and then having to justify that to your husband also blows my mind. That she herself describes him here as just so controlling that he has to decide everything. I don't know how you end up in this marriage. That just sounds pretty awful. One person says, these all sound like choices that are for you to decide. How you birth is up to you, how you feed is up to you, how you care for your baby is up to you when it comes to baby wearing, pacifiers, diapers, etc. And how you choose to care for yourself postpartum is also up to you. You know yourself, your body, your needs, and you know your baby. Sounds like he'll have some tough adjustments, but that's on him. And I always think that when people say things like this, they are just completely ignorant of the actual direct situation that she's in. Because yes, to some extent, those things are up to her. But actually, no, the baby is not hers exclusively. And so when it comes to things like baby wearing pacifiers, diapers, generally speaking, the father should have a vote. It's not that he's just there. It's not that because the woman is so much more involved, especially if she's breastfeeding and so on in those early weeks, months, years, that means that the father has absolutely no role to play. And the fact that there is a disagreement here always highlights to me, especially depending on how fundamental the disagreement is, and this seems to be a pretty fundamental disagreement, the fact that there's such a disagreement here suggests to me that there's such an opposite. They're both on completely opposite ends when it comes to the values that they believe in and the types of life that they want their kid to have. And I don't know how you can come back from that, because even if you solve the argument here, even if you say, okay, you know what, I'm the person that's going to be looking after the baby and I'm the one giving birth and so on, so I don't really care what you say, I'm just going to do my thing. And he goes along with it. Say you now have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old. Are you still going to be on the same page or are you still not going to be on the same page when it comes to raising the kid then? And then you're kind of screwed at that point. So, yeah, seems pretty rough and unfortunate to me. Next one says, unfortunately, I don't think this is a difference in parenting issue. I worry that this is a marriage issue. This seems like a control problem rather than what he actually feels is best for you or his child. I would get to a marriage counselor ASAP if I were you. I'm so sorry to read this post and all that you are experiencing. And then this person says, I agree with the previous poster. Sounds like some underlying issues, and not to be mean, but lack of communication on both parts. Now, I don't know that I'd say, hey, there's a lack of communication here. It sounds to me like you're just on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to what you think early motherhood and childhood should look like. And that's a pretty big shame. I do agree fundamentally that this sounds like a marriage problem, and I have no idea how to fix it from here. But I would hope that if you invest a lot of time in trying to get yourselves on the same page and trying to understand where the other person is coming from, why they want to do things in a particular way, maybe his reasons for it are fundamentally along the lines of, yeah, this is just foreign to him. And, you know, he's experienced 5 other kids who didn't have any of this. So he doesn't quite understand why you want to do it differently. He's happy with the way that his kids were raised. Maybe you can really sit down and try and have an in-depth, detailed conversation about why you are so far apart when it comes to these things, and why it's such a big deal to him when it comes to things like how you choose to give birth and labor, which sounds a bit strange to me. Honestly, I think the vast majority of husbands would not have a very strong opinion on that. So I find it strange that he does.